day's Casual Friday. That means Monday is Casual Monday. Tuesday, Casual Tuesday. Wednesday, Casual Hump Day. Thursday, Casual Thurs. That's what we call it. And Friday, Casual Shabbat. The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
It is Friday, June 2nd, 2023. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Alex Pareene, contributing editor at the New Republic, co-host of the Politics of Everything podcast. Also on the program today, writer and comedian Adam Conover from that show Adam Ruins Everything and Other Stuff on the WGA strike. Also on the program today, Senate passes the debt deal. Biden to sign it today and give a primetime news conference speech address to the country. Meanwhile, in that deal, Manchin's pipeline inclusion not only contributes to global warming and to other dangers in the environment, it also more or less shuts the door to permitting changes needed for renewable energy. The Supreme Court attacks unions with its ruling in the Glacier Northwest case. 98% of Ascension Union votes to authorize what could be the largest nurses' strike in Texas history. This in Austin. Surprisingly high number of new jobs headlines a mostly good job report. But labor strength is weakening. Wages growth is weakening, and a jump in black unemployment rate. Hundreds of Gannett newspaper staffers to stage a labor action today, and 250 editorial employees, the parent group of Business Insider, are on strike. Senate votes to reverse Biden's loan forgiveness plan. He'll veto. Nevertheless, Supreme Court may take care of it all anyways. And that Georgia investigation of Trump, it's broadening. They have the most comprehensive state RICO statute in the country. Don't know why.
Wouldn't have expected that.
Don't know why. And a new poll shows that Ron DeSantis has been deflated. Or put another way, Ron DeSantis has been deflated. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks so much for joining us today. It is Casual Friday. Emma, so casual today that she's doing this show from at home.
And also not doing it.
I don't know. She could be doing it, but we have no way of transmitting it. So she could, in fact, be doing it. Hello, Emma.
Probably go back to bed instead of doing the show.
Yeah, she's a little bit under the weather. I'm sure all is fine. Don't worry, she'll be back, ladies and gentlemen. In the meantime, Bradley and Matt are here. We're going to talk about this debt deal and what's going on with DeSantis or DeSantis. DeSantis.
Here with Sam Seder.
Yep. Oh, shoot, I forgot to do that. But let's check in on the Biden investigations. I'm sure we're going to get, the next stop for James Comer is going to be investigating the sandbag to see if that was actually a real sandbag. Yeah, exactly. Did you guys talk about that? Did he trip? When did he trip? He tripped yesterday.
I think it was after the show yesterday.
Yeah, we should just say Joe Biden tripped on a sandbag yesterday, and apparently seems to be fine. but I'm sure there'll be
Got a push notification from Truth Social.
We'll see about the hearings. We'll see about the hearings in a bit. Meanwhile, there seems to be growing frustration on the right with the failure of House Oversight Committee Chair James Comer to find anything in this investigation. And let's be clear, they are looking for a document from Chris Wray, who's the head of the FBI. And the document they're looking for is ostensibly filed by a whistleblower who has ghosted the committee. I know that sounds intriguing, but the document, to be clear, is the rawest of raw intelligence. It is more or less like the functional equivalent of the VAERS system. None of it has been vetted. It is literally as if I were to make a charge, right? Joe Biden's been in the office and stealing, pencils from us and filed it on this specific form with the FBI. They are obligated to keep it, but it is not a document that has been in any way vetted, or to the extent that it has been found to be unsubstantiated. But they're trying to make it about that because they've got nothing. Here's Comer.
Let's talk about your call earlier today with the FBI Director Christopher Wray, along with Senator Chuck Grassley. And you have been asking and demanding that they turn over this 1023 form. Director Wray acknowledged that they have it. He would produce it for you in private. Let me ask you about this, because my understanding of a 1023 is pretty simple, is that it is an allegation. You and Senator Grassley believe it's a credible allegation based on the individual whistleblower that brought it to your attention. Okay, I tend to trust you too. However, the question I have is, are we going to start releasing all 1023s publicly? Would that result in an invasion of privacy or the potential of making accusations against people that they have not fully corroborated? And why not take advantage of the FBI director's offer to see it in like a private skiff or whatever area he deems secure?
Well, to answer that question, Sean, he offered us the opportunity to come look at it in a private ship, but he was going to redact it. My experience with getting documents from the FBI when they're redacted, it's all black lines. They don't show anything.
Now, what's fascinating about this is you really got to ask yourself a question. Why is Sean Hannity worried about these 1023 documents setting the precedent here? I mean, Sean Hannity is the most reasonable I have ever heard him ever before. And it suggests to me that there could be a lot of 1023 documents in there. I mean, these are completely unverified reports from really anybody. But they all would deal with, like, things that could be sensitive, like a top government official or something to like that effect. I wonder how many 1023s there are about Donald Trump or Sean Hannity, for that matter.
Yeah, if you selectively start releasing certain types of classified documents, but not others, it's for a purpose.
And now he's saying, well, I don't want to go in there if any of it's going to be redacted. And of course, this allegation by this whistleblower, where's the whistleblower? Just find your own whistleblower. Here is Chuck Grassley with the same predicament. Bill Hemmer and Dana Perino are asking him, like, well, wait, what? And he's just going, it doesn't matter if it's real. There's a writer's strike on. We need material, is what Grassley's saying.
We need a MacGuffin.
Exactly.
For a non-classified document to be held in secret.
Senator, how damning is this document to the sitting U.S. president?
Well, it's I don't know that, and that's what we need.
You've read it.
I read it. Let's put it this way: there's accusations in it, but it's not for me to make a judgment about whether these accusations are accurate or not. It's up to my job to make sure the FBI is doing their job, and that's what this is all about, as far as I'm concerned. Public's business ought to be public.
James Comey, the former FBI director.
So here's Grassley basically saying that he's seen it. And the accusation could be anything. And he doesn't know if it's true. He won't even say that he thinks it's true because he knows it's just completely bat crap crazy. So he wants this investigation by the FBI to be public, or the accusation to be public. Why doesn't he just say it? If he knows the accusation, why doesn't he say it? Because you know why? Because he doesn't want the words to come out of his mouth.
He doesn't want to be the source.
He doesn't want to be the source. They all want somebody else to be the source. That way, they don't have to touch it. They only have to tout it.
They're not accountable for any sort of truth value or lack thereof.
And you can tell they're just being the frustration is just massive. When Sean Hannity is saying, like, do you really want to publicize these completely unsubstantiated allegations? Because isn't that going to set a precedent? For me, I'm 100% in favor of it. I want all of them.
Yeah, pass a law
Release all the 1023s.
Pass a law against those redactions too.
It's too bad because it's not like a Twitter file situation where you only get to selectively choose what you're going to leak to fashion your narrative. Today's program, get to Alex Pareene in just a moment. Today's program brought to you by my favorite sponsor, SunsetLakeSebede.com. SunsetLakeSebede.com. Use the coupon code LeftIsBest. You'll get 20% off. These guys have the best Sebede flour, pre-rolls. They got blunts now. They've got great tinctures with melatonin, tinctures that are flavored orange or mint or just original. I happen to be an original guy, maybe occasionally a mint. They've got gummies. They've got sour Sebede gummies. They've got Sebede gummies with melatonin. They've got Sebede gummies with a hint of THC, which is, trace amounts that small enough that you can ship, obviously. They've got Sebede fudge and Sebede coffee. They've got Sebede moisturizer, unscented. Thank you for that. I don't know if they did that specifically for me. And a salve that I use for my eczema, which I decided to feature today. I got a little bit of that on my arm, and it's actually already clearing up because of the salve I use on it. That salve is supposed to be for your muscles. They have all sorts of products, but here's the key to it, too. They don't use any pesticides. They use integrated pest management. They use regenerative farming practices. They work with the University of Vermont with that. They're located up near Burlington. They are also huge movement partners. They have funded strike funds. They have funded refugee resettlement. We have done a bunch of fundraisers with them over the years. The Innocence Project, the Last Prisoner Project. They have given money to food pantries. They're just great movement partners. They produce a great product. They have great business practices, mostly employee-owned, $20 minimum wage. Great group of folks up there. SunsetLakeSebede.com. Use the coupon code LeftIsBest, 20% off. Check it out right now. Do yourself a real favor. The Sebede is great on its own, but it's also there's an entourage. What is it? Entourage effect.
Entourage.
Yeah, which I'm exploring. I'm doing experiments on. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be talking to Alex Pareene. He's contributing editor of The New Republic, co-host of The Politics of Everything. And just a reminder, it's your support that makes this show possible. You can become a member at jointhemajority.report.com. You can also support this show by giving us a good review on iTunes. It's been a long time since we asked for that, but we still put out the podcast. If you're on Twitch, you can use your subscription for us. If you're a Prime member, doesn't cost you anything. Just sends us a couple of coins each month, and that's it. See you in just a moment. Quick break. We are back. Sam Seder on the Majority Report. Emma Vigeland, day off today of sorts. Joining us, Alex Pareene. He is the contributing editor at the New Republic, co-host of the Politics of Everything. Also been contributing over at the Defector. And we'll talk about a piece you just wrote there, Alex. Welcome back to the program.
Thanks, man. Good to be here. Good to see. I'm glad you're feeling better. I missed you last time I was here.
I know it. That was a rough day. I'm going to talk about that. But all right. Yeah, it's going around. And also they cut off the water around here anyway. It's in that
drinking.
Yeah. All right. Let's get into this. The Senate just passed the debt ceiling. The debt ceiling deal last night. Biden's gonna sign it today, and presumably, and then address the nation at 7 p.m. Give me your let's start with the broad take on this.
Yeah, I think that my broad take on this is it is a. I basically agree with what, I don't know if you read what Brian Beutler wrote about it, but I think he's been sort of right on about it, and that we're getting this sort of celebration of this fact that it could have been worse, basically, right? Like that's what we're sort of getting as the spin on it is like look, like this could have been much worse. But at the end of the day, what happened is a negotiation was entered into over something that was effectively promised that they wouldn't negotiate over, and the fact that the end result is not as bad as it could have been doesn't really bode well for a future of basically this happening again in 2025.
Right. And here, and this is the thing that I find a little bit frustrating, because there is this attempt to basically say, this is basically, there was an inevitability about this because it would be a budget negotiation because the Republicans won the House.
Yeah.
And on some level, that's true.
Yeah.
But the point is the debt ceiling was allowed to be a lever,
Right.
and to provide leverage that had to have impacted the outcome of that negotiation.
That's exactly
I
right.
mean,
Yeah.
there's just no way that didn't have an impact on it. And, or if it didn't, then it's all just sort of like it's just all a charade. And, we have two things that are coming out of this that I think are really problematic. I mean, obviously freezing, the budget, which really is a functional cut of the discretionary budget. We had the increase in the military budget. Again, the fact that we had this increase in the military budget and we're not going to talk about it very much is also a function of this whole sort of kabuki theater that existed here. And then this thing with Manchin's pipeline. But how much of this do you think was like, I have heard that it wasn't just Manchin who didn't want to deal with the debt ceiling at the end of December, that it was like there was more. There were like people even like Klobuchar and a couple other senators. It's almost like they like the bigger drama so they don't have to address the problems that are in the bill.
I think that's right. And, I didn't look that closely, but the reporting, the one story I saw basically said that's right, that the holdup was the sort of obvious Manchin and Sinema not wanting to deal with the debt ceiling before this. Those were the obvious ones, but that a bunch of other senators who didn't want to go public with it agreed with them. And I do think it's a function of a group of members of Congress who like high stakes negotiation and do believe in some sense that these kind of outcomes are their job, right? Like their job is to allow a crisis to come to a head so that they can engage in high stakes deal making and end up with a result that it makes no one happy, but at least we got it done. And they celebrate those things as a victory. And if that's your mindset, it's exactly like you say. The fact that the budget negotiation came with much higher stakes and much greater Republican leverage than it would have otherwise is perfectly fine for those people. And so, I don't know. I don't know that I'm not surprised to hear that there were a bunch of other senators who didn't want to be public about it, but who basically agree.
And I wonder, had there been more pressure, if there's a reason why they don't want to be they don't want to be public about it, right? And so, the way that you pressure these people is to make it public about it, so that they've got to own these machinations. It seems to me, and own up to it's a perfect way to, and both these bills, right? I think in both houses passed with a majority of Democrats, significant majority of Democrats relative to the Republicans.
Yeah.
And they're doing it to save the economy.
Right. That's right.
As opposed to doing it, they get to save the economy. They try and make it seem like it's a wash in terms of the actual policy, and it may be close to a wash about the actual policy. I mean, it's definitely a net negative, but again, they tout it could have been worse. Yeah. Here comes this tsunami, but we were smart. We evacuated everybody and we put enough sandbags down, and there's damages mitigated. But they want there to be this sort of tsunami that they have no control over, so that they can, there's almost like a Munchausen, feeling that's going on here. But then part of it is also Joe Manchin got what he wanted from that when he screwed over the Democrats. I mean, let's go back. Do you remember the timeline? Do you want to bring it out?
Go over it. Yeah.
Okay. The timeline was there were two bills in the Build Back Better, where there was one bill, let's say, it was called Build Back Better. Mm-hmm. And there was a decision to separate those into the infrastructure bill and then the Build Back Better bill, which I guess ultimately became the IRA.
Right.
And people and it was for the most part progressives, right. but I actually think it wasn't just limited to that. There was a lot of people who wanted to do the whole thing together because this is the way leverage works.
Yes.
You got something that I don't like, but you want, and I got something that I like, but you don't want. We're going to put them in one basket and we're going to pass the basket. And instead, these bills were separated, and there was a promise by the administration, by the Democrats, a vow, we're not going to vote on these separately. Like we're going to, and Pelosi sort of backtracked on that, or maybe there was some ambiguity, whatever it was. And they pass the infrastructure bill, and it's a bipartisan bill. And then the rest of the Build Back Better dies.
Yep.
And it comes back in the Inflation Reduction Act, which is a good bill.
Yeah.
More or less. And it was, but the deal was with Manchin, I'll allow this to go forward if you give me my permit. There were two things he wanted. He wanted this MVP, this big pipeline in Virginia. My guess is his cousin owns 50% of it or whatever it is.
Right.
And he wanted a relaxation of permitting rules so that they could happen quicker. The maximum time has now been at 2 years, but most of them are going to be done with a year. But again, the entity now that is supposedly does these permitting, they have less money.
Right.
And Manchin got that in this, even though he was denied it by the Democrats who feel like he lied on splitting the bills. And he got it in this. And the problem with that is the rest of the reform that progressives wanted for things like tying the grid into solar or wind stations, that was supposed to be set up to be, we get that and you get your MVP.
Right.
But now he's already gotten the things he wants. So if to get that in the future, it's going to cost more in terms of fossil fuel advances. And this may be one of the more problematic things. Well, certainly it's the most problematic in terms of like long range policy, in terms of like material impact on individuals. We're going to see it. It's not as direct. We're going to see it in terms of climate change and probably, the people who are more likely to get the refinery near their neighborhood or the electrical station near their neighborhood. But it was all, there was no reason for it is the issue.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, I do, this is going to be one of those things where, it's just going to sound like, we are increasingly bitter and crazy for having a memory of things that happened a few years ago. As it goes on, as the years go by, we will just sound like we are increasingly embittered about just remembering this. But yeah, I mean, the critics of splitting up the original entire sort of domestic policy agenda, the critics of splitting it up were correct. The defenses of it were dishonest or proved incorrect. And basically, most of the worst case scenarios predicted, again, by progressives have come to pass. And it has just been this continual handing over of leverage. This has been sort of a pattern of negotiation dating back to the first year of the administration, basically, is negotiating leverage to the other side, promising that things are going to work out anyway, and then sort of selling these extremely compromised versions of what the original plan was, sort of over and over again. But yeah, I mean, Manchin obviously I don't know how highly I think of his intelligence, but he's played this masterfully and has gotten basically everything he's wanted.
Yeah. And here's the thing is like, I was listening to, I listened to the lesser AP news on the radio all the time in the mornings. And as I was hearing them talk about it, like, a bipartisan deal and it got it done, it makes it feel like Congress is really doing something.
That's right.
And it does sound like that if you're not aware that they also created the problem.
That's exactly right. And they actually I do think that they live for that to the point that they encourage, it's like they believe in the Hollywood version of like the world coming together when an asteroid is headed for the Earth. And then to do that, they launch asteroids at the Earth. Like they are the ones who decide the course of the asteroid, so that they can then come together and then and like pass the Asteroid Reduction Act.
Exactly. But the thing is that I as I hear it, I can understand its allure to, let's say, the Biden administration because they think this is what the American people want.
Well, right.
And it's going to have some value. Like it's not hard for me to imagine that they're sitting there going, and it makes some sense. I have to admit, at least, on its face. Do you want the chaos agent, or do you want the guy who can bring the Republicans and the Democrats together to save the planet from the asteroid? He did the Asteroid Movement Act, and it saved the planet.
Right.
But the thing is that's frustrating is that no one would have paid attention. You could have diverted the asteroid.
Yep.
And there would have been one report. Asteroid is going to miss the planet by 100 miles or 1,000 miles or whatever it is, and that would have been it. That's the thing is that like they could have avoided all of this. It wouldn't have been like there was argument over the debt ceiling. They could have invoked they could have just paid the bills. And when they were questioned on it, they just say like, well, Constitution says we got to, and just ignored it. And they didn't want to do that. And there would have been no price to pay on that.
Yeah. And I think that's where their entire sort of conception of the politics of this seems to me to be really suspect. And because I do think you're right. I think that there's a sort of Washington consensus idea that that unilateral action to get rid of the debt ceiling as a sort of Damocles, right? To unilateral action to remove the debt ceiling as a source of leverage, as a sort of looming disaster. That getting rid of it would be almost as disastrous as default. I think you saw a lot of sort of centrist conventional wisdom people making that case over the last year or so, and it seems to be complete nonsense, because I think you're totally right. It's too arcane and obscure of a thing where certainly people would have cried bloody murder had the administration done any of the sort of unilateral actions it could have done to get rid of it. But I can't imagine it I can't imagine that scenario being worse than, essentially allowing the threat of default to force you into a negotiation. Because it's like you said a little while ago, they can pretend it's the same as a budget negotiation, but the leverage that the House majority has in a budget negotiation is much less when there's no threat of default behind it. Obviously, it's much less.
Right, and it's all about a government shutdown. And it's much easier to blame the Republicans in a government shutdown situation where it's like Congress won't come forward with a bill, or you feature what's in that bill.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. You start to use this is an opportunity for politics to exist and for you to sort of develop a narrative about them. And, here somebody IM'd majority report wardrobe coordinator. If Democrats voted for this, if more Democrats voted for this than Republicans, and you have 62 other senators voting for it, why the F does Joe Manchin need to get a pipeline? In the, I don't have the Senate numbers in front of me.
Yeah, I don't either.
But the skill associated with this is that Manchin brought in that pipeline late in the game. And it was such a small piece that you don't have the reporting on it. And without the reporting on it, the bill gets, the deal is out there for 72 hours. People are talking about SNAP. They're talking about, the work requirements on SNAP and TANT. They're talking about, some of the key points of the bill. By the time you get to Manchin's pipeline, it is so late in the game that you can't, you got very little reporting on it, and then you have very little activism around it. And within 24 hours, you can't put pressure on the 100 Democrats. There was 165 Democrats that voted for it. Last night, I guess there was 63 Democrats that voted for or I should say 63 votes for it all told. I don't know what the Democratic Republican breakdown is. Give me that if you can, Bradley. But you would have had to get to 100 Democrats in the House to stop this.
Yeah, right.
In the House. And that would have been that's, you need time to do that. To say,
exactly.
On that permitting reform sort of issue. In the Senate, I don't know how many Democrats you would have needed to get to, but I don't know how many of them, I guess there was 13 or 12 Democrats that voted for it. Could you have held up, 4 or 5 of those? I guess really you needed 5 to hold them up and say, I'm not voting for this unless Manchin's thing's out of there.
Yeah.
But that's,
And you're asking too.
And then that's where the debt ceiling has the leverage.
That's exactly right.
Because people are saying, wait, you're threatening the entire economy because of one pipeline in West Virginia?
One stupid pipeline. That's right. Yeah. And it's like the debt ceiling has leverage, and also you can never underestimate the desire of senators to just go home, to want to be finished and go home.
Without a doubt.
You want to hold this up for more negotiation when we already finished this stupid deal? It's time to vote and go home.
I will 100% guarantee you that you can find a public statement by Chuck Schumer or the whip, Dick Durbin saying, I don't think members want to stay here for the weekend. They want to get this done.
They want to get back to, exactly.
That's it. I mean, end of story. It's summertime. They want to go.
Weather's beautiful,
on the lake or whatever it is that they're doing. It really is a problem with our politics. Yeah. I mean, I just, I don't know.
And I think again, it's a problem with our politics. And again, the theory behind this being a win for the White House, it strikes me as really similar to the big infrastructure bill too, right? Where it's the White House is celebrating these headlines about how there was a big bipartisan victory for the president, and that was the theory behind doing infrastructure first, was it'll lead to good headlines and help Joe Biden, and it didn't. We saw there was, I think, actual shock that how little it did, how little it moved the needle for regular people. This massive bipartisan congressional package, this big spending on infrastructure. And when it had no sort of macro effect on polls or the political environment, they were confused. And I think again, we maybe will see some halo effect for this big deal now, but I imagine it'll be a really similar end result, right?
And here's the thing is that there is a tendency to, I think, and I certainly share this frustration of to want to exact a price from our politicians, or the ones that are supposedly at least marginally on our side, ostensibly.
Yeah.
And it really, the people who need to engage in this type of critique and understanding, it seems to me, have to be normie Democrats.
Yes.
That's the thing is we're dealing with, the world that at least I feel I deal with is like, at the very least, like the progressive Democrats, and then maybe, to the left.
Yeah.
And it really is normie Democrats that need to sort of like engage in this type of like understanding. And that's where the biggest block is. Like, this is a big fight, it seems to me, with the Jonathan Chait type. I mean, I didn't read anything that he said, but everybody's going to be celebrating these victories and failing to understand it really is a fight within like sort of like various ilks of normie Democrats to sort of say like, you need to get better leaders, because I don't think Joe Biden's agenda was, we're going to slightly tweak the SNAP requirements, and it may throw off my goal is to get a couple 100,000 people off of SNAP.
Right.
And even though we get the homeless and the veterans, like there's no even like ideological goal here for even the worst of a neoliberal. Like there's nothing here for that other than like, Joe Manchin put some money in his pocket, essentially.
Yeah.
There's a lack of concern about these other things, but they don't feel like they're paying a price to sort of not care about these things urgently. And this is like a normie Democrat failure.
It's the
to
people
demand better leaders.
Yeah. And I think that's right. And it takes a great deal of integrity to say this, but to be fair to Jonathan Chait, I think his last take that I saw was that basically the exact same point of establishing the precedent of using the debt ceiling for this negotiation was horrible. Regardless of the result, establishing this precedent was horrible. But I think you're right.
My apologies to Jonathan Chait.
Yeah, exactly.
I was just referring to him as an icon,
but no, you are
as an avatar, as opposed to. I don't read him enough to know where he's at on everything.
The people who have it's the people whose default mode is like, don't worry, Joe's got this. Like he knows what he's doing, and that's the attitude, that the quote unquote normie Democrat attitude is like, why do you think you know better? Why do you think you know better than this White House? Why do you think you know better than this leadership? They have this, they know what they're doing. And then like, I mean, that attitude continues to persist in the face of reporting like, people being surprised that the like punting on the debt ceiling would come back to bite them in the ass. Like there was reporting on that. Like people were like, we didn't actually think, like we thought Republicans would like be so scared of default that they would come to the table and be reasonable. And like, of course not. Like what world are you living in? And that's why it's, again, I don't know, to get through to that group of people who are really important for the sort of coalition. Yeah, you have to, I don't know, like it has to be made clear that like this result didn't have to have happened this way. It just didn't have to have gone this way. And this is like, snatching acceptable compromise out of what could have been disaster is just really not worth celebrating.
Yeah, and it is a predicament. It is such a predicament in terms of like, where like, how do you get the fervor and the intensity you need about, minting the coin or, pursuing the 14th Amendment route 8 months ago?
Yeah.
Right.
Like,
yeah. 9 months ago. Like it just, that's one of the really tricky, and I don't know if we just need, on some level, like that's why it's just important that the generation of politicians who are coming of age now in the Democratic Party have a different understanding of partisan politics, regardless of where they are ideologically within the Democratic Party. They have a different understanding of politics where like there's value in winning in terms of like, motivating people to vote for you. And and avoiding dumb fights. And I don't know, but let's. I don't know that there's much more to be said there unless you got something. You know, hopefully the IRS funding will come back.
Yeah.
The you know,
I mean, that's, yeah, the IRS thing, it's, I mean, whatever. It's so funny to just like, to negotiate away your like, your big wins from like a few, you know, from a few months ago, right? To just negotiate them right away after getting them done.
They're going to backload those cuts. The $80 billion for the IRS was over 10 years. They're going to put it all in the last 2 years, and they're going to try and get another bite at that apple. But but the top line is, if you cut $20 billion from the IRS, you're going to lose $40 billion in revenue.
Yeah, right.
And so the top line is, your deficit reduction move just increased the deficit.
Right.
I mean, and so, but they can't do that. It's all wasted now. They can't do this because they can't have these fights because of this, you know, sword of Damocles that they've literally rigged themselves to swing over their head.
Right.
I mean, it's a great technique. It's basically like, I don't know. It's like leaving a boiling pot on at home so that no matter who you're dealing with at any part of the day, you're like, you know what? I would love to help you, but I gotta go. I gotta. There's a boiling pot on at home. I just. All right, let's talk about Ron DeSantis. When did he come into the race? Was it this week or last week?
Well, when was the
Twitter debacle? I guess
that must have been last week. Yeah.
It was a week ago, but nevertheless, he's been on the tour. And this is what I find sort of interesting about what DeSantis is doing. He has yet to figure out how to pronounce his name.
Yeah.
Let's play this compilation. And I'm curious as to your theories about this. And do we know, is there a timeline on this? Because I would like to see if it's timed. But nevertheless, here's the compilation.
I'm Ron DeSantis.
I am Ron DeSantis.
This is Governor Ron DeSantis.
Hello, this is Governor Ron DeSantis wishing everyone a Merry Christmas.
Hi, this is Governor Ron DeSantis, and I want to wish you a happy Thanksgiving. Hi, I'm Governor Ron DeSantis, and I want to congratulate all of you at Rumble as you open your U.S. headquarters.
So it's unclear, and apparently people have asked him, is it DeSantis or is it DeSantis?
Right.
And his campaign has not answered. Oh, yeah, here's where he is asked. He was asked the specific question. It's become such a big issue. And he was asked the question, what was this, yesterday? Yeah, here it is.
I've got a long last name, European name, Steinhauser. There's been some confusion over your last name and the pronunciation, and I'm just wondering, to correct the record, what is it?
Oh, that's ridiculous, these stupid things. Listen, the way to pronounce my last name, Winner.
Okay. Now, is it Winner or Wanner?
Is it, yeah. Is it
Winner?
Rob Weiner.
Ron DeWiner.
Ron Weiner.
I
don't know.
What is going on there?
I don't know, man. It's deeply weird. And it's the kind of weird that like, it's almost, I don't know. It's a little bit like throwback weird. Like it reminds me of like a bit like, 2012 Romney campaign weird, where you're just like, like, hey, like this guy's a little bit off. It sort of strikes me as like, he got some sort of advice or coaching about how to like say his own last name that isn't sticking, maybe. Like I really can't explain it. There's
a couple of theories floating around. One is that DeSantis, and do we know like what the most recent pronunciation was?
The newest one is the DeSantis.
Okay, the DeSantis was too like ethnic sounding.
Yeah.
Like honestly, like either too Italian or maybe too Latin, you know?
Yeah.
And that they I mean, and maybe it was like Tiny D. Maybe that really like, because you can't say Tiny Da. You say Tiny D. But what it definitely shows, and I also had a theory that like, you know, like Rush Limbaugh, if you ever listened to Limbaugh a lot back in the day, he would mispronounce words all the time. And so I started doing that a little bit on the radio because it got people talking about like, why does he say this? Like literally, this is like one of the few things that people are talking about with Ron DeSantis right now.
It's like how he's
pronouncing his name, and it almost is like it doesn't matter what you're, you know, any publicity is good publicity, but it does sort of reek of they're panicking.
Yeah, that's right, and it's the kind of thing you don't. It's the kind of thing that you don't like. Well, whatever. That a well-run campaign does not like let become a thing that gets him universally mocked by everyone from all sides. And I say this as, you know, as someone whose own ancestors changed our last name to sound less Italian. Certainly, I can relate to not wanting to sound too Italian. But it's like hard to laugh it off if you're like Ron DeSantis, because the attempt to laugh it off just seems like it causes him like physical pain. To try that line just seemed like it was the most uncomfortable thing he's ever done. I pronounce it winner.
Yeah, it's this was that, and they were quiet for like, they've been asked, the people had checked in with the campaign, and they spent like 10 hours.
Like
honestly, at least 10 hours, maybe a full day.
They had to run a focus group, probably.
Yeah, this is what we're going to do. You say, I pronounce it winner. And on some level, like, if his opponent was like Jeb Bush, I don't think you'd ever hear anything about it.
Right.
But the idea that we're not going to hear Donald Trump talk about this for the next 3 months, I think
that's right, because I think Trump has already made fun of him for it. I think, but like, that's the thing. It's like, you can't.
Do we have Trump making fun of him for it?
Pretty sure he retweeted that video that we posted.
Oh, that was Trump repeating that.
Trump at least, yeah. But like, it's not just like schoolyard bully rules, but it's like insult comic rules. Like, you just can't show. This is the kind of thing he will seize on.
Oh my God.
Like, when he's actually in his element is when in a primary campaign, when he's just screwing around with like self-serious dudes like Ron DeSantis.
I mean, this gets him off the like the de-sanctimonious hook, because that was always like that always struck me as you need to do a little bit too much work.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And it reversed the formula that Trump has, which is it brought to the fore a dynamic or a character trait, and then sort of, tried to capture it. This does the opposite, because Trump is going to get up there. He's going to go, DeSantis.
Yeah.
He said it was winner, but is he sure it's not wiener? Like, we don't know. Even Ron DeWiener doesn't know who he is. And then the funny part's up front, and then the subtext is like he can't figure out what he's supposed to be doing. He can't. Never mind. He can't figure out how to get his polls up. He doesn't even know his last name.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is he lost? It's just there's so much there to attack this guy on. It's going to be fascinating to see how Trump goes at him. But the other interesting thing is, he got absolutely no bump from his launch. I guess that's not terribly surprising.
Yeah.
But what do you make with there's a lot of people entering into the race, which I guess we all knew, but they're all entering in on the non sort of like Trump side, right? Like Asa Hutchinson, Chris Christie is gonna jump in. Sununu maybe is talking about it a little bit. Although, like, New Hampshire seems to be, a couple of people switched over to DeSantis as if that makes a difference, it seems to me. But, like, they're trying to make a story about it. Somebody said they switched over to DeSantis because of Kylie McEnany. It seems like there's a real sense that any movement we're seeing in the Republican Party is a function of what's going on with the Jack Smith investigation and in Georgia.
Yeah, right.
I mean, the Jack Smith stuff seems like they're going to be able to charge him on something, even if it's just obstruction.
Right.
I don't know that the treason thing is actually gonna work, but that's going to enhance the obstruction charge. And in Georgia, it sounds like they're just expanding the menu for what they're going to charge him on.
Right. I think that the only reason to get in to the Republican race right now, if you're a potential candidate, there are two reasons to get in. One of them is just to enhance your brand and make some money, like as usual. But then the other reason is you think Trump will be dead or on trial. And because I don't, if you are Chris Christie, I can't imagine you actually think that there's a electoral path to victory that involves defeating Trump in primaries across the country. So it's a bet. It's like a bet on him being unavailable for some reason. And and someone having to be there if that happens.
It feels like Christie must be just can he really not get a job on radio?
Yeah. The thing about Christie is I noticed this a few years ago is for all of his tough guy bluster, he's got a really whiny voice. Actually not a good radio voice. He's got sort of a reedy, whiny voice. And I think that's why he has to actually run for office instead of just becoming a full-time pundit dude.
And I don't think, based upon my experience with TV, I don't know that there's producers out there who are we're going to put Chris Christie on. People don't want to, he's just not people like to put eye candy on television.
Right.
And Chris Christie is not that.
No.
And so I guess he just doesn't know what else to do.
I think he's running for president because he's just doesn't have a better gig lined up.
It's going to be interesting to see what happens. I mean, not to mention also the same with Joe Biden. He seems okay. He bounced back from that fall. I got to say, if my 82, how old is he now? He's 80, but if my 83-year-old father took a spill like that, I'd be concerned. And Biden seemed to just pop back up. So that's, I guess, somewhat encouraging.
Has he been remember when they would put him on a bike? Has he been on a bike lately? I feel like we haven't seen that in a little while.
I sort of feel like he should not be allowed to ride a bike until after the inauguration. Yeah.
I'm just wondering as we get closer to re-election, what sort of look at how alive he is, what sort of moves we're going to see on that front, because they're going to have to do something.
Right. Jump roping or something like that. Alex Pareene, always a pleasure.
Yes, of course.
Thanks for joining us, man.
All right.
Folks can check you out either at The Defector or co-hosting the Politics of Everything podcast.
That's right.
All right. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks, man. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, Adam Conover will be joining us. Writer, comedian, was the creator of Adam Ruins Everything, a great show to show to your, really normies. Any age, but normies in general, to introduce them to everything from antitrust to other types of policy questions. We'll be right back. He's going to talk to us about the WGA strike. We'll be right back after this. We are back. Sam Seder on the Majority Report. Emma out today. Real pleasure to welcome to the program writer and comedian Adam Conover. He was the creator and the lead of Adam Ruins Everything, and also had a miniseries on Netflix, The G Word. And before Adam, we brought you on, I asked you if you'd been on, because we've been talking about having you on. I literally for like 6-7 years, I feel like. But things move slow here, and I apologize for that.
Oh, don't worry. I mean, look at the two of us next to each other. We look like brothers here. This is why have we not
you in like 10 or 15 years. Good luck. Good luck to you. But like I just remember like the learning about why my eyeglasses were so expensive from you. That was just one that like I was just like, God damn it. Like the great stuff on antitrust and all sorts of public policy questions. I really appreciate the work. And but now you have really inserted yourself into a story, and that is a labor story. We've been covering the writers' strike, Writers Guild of America. The strike is now about a month old. Plus,
yeah, we're in week 5 currently. This is the end of week 5.
Tell us what the scope of the issues are. I mean, we've talked about it a little bit, but give us a sense of this.
Sure. So the short version is that we're fighting for the survival of film and television writing as a career and a profession. The companies are trying to turn it into gig work, because they're trying to turn us into freelancers who, maybe you get a script a couple times a year, you make a couple $1,000. Meanwhile, you have to go back to driving Uber or, doing whatever odd job you do to make ends meet. That's what they're trying to push us towards in, capital's never-ending quest to reduce how much their labor costs are. And they're doing it in different ways depending on what sector of the business you're talking about. They're pressuring television writers in a different way from film writers. But the overall story is they're trying to eliminate this as a sustainable career, and we're not going to let them, both for our own sakes and for the good of the industry. This is an industry that thrived and creates the most valuable media property in the world, partially because it attracts the best writers and talent in the world, because for a century, this has been the one place that talent could actually get paid. You can't really get paid in journalism. You can't really get paid in novels, but you can get paid in Hollywood. And that's what they're trying to end, and we're not going to let them do that. And so we're out there every day withholding our labor so that, until they remember that we're the people who make the product and they actually need us and they don't have anything without us. They've forgotten that. We're out there reminding them. And as soon as they figure it out, they're going to come back to the table and make a deal with us.
How many writers are in the Writers Guild?
Depends on how you count. Between 10 and 12,000 is the group that's currently on strike. We have a few other smaller bargaining groups that are not on strike right now, such as some news writers for some different networks and things like that. But the film and television group is about 11 to 12,000.
And maybe you don't know this, but I mean, from my own experience, I know how writers work, and it's like, they get a gig and it'll last 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, or this is the way it used to be, really. And, then they could go months and months and months without a gig. And, part of like the way that worked, I mean, it's a little bit stressful. You make a big chunk of money here, but then you've got to make it last. You don't know how long. And so like, I don't know if you would know this, but is there a number of like, at least how it had been, how many writers are working at any given time? Because it seems to me that like what they're doing is trying to sort of like shorten that window. It used to be 3 months or 6 months or 9 months, shorten that window so they can take a pick in a day here, a day there. And it makes it impossible, even the stress that existed if you're a writer where you work for 6 months and the gig ends and then you got to find another one, you got to wait for the next pilot season or whatever it is. This is going to be impossible to sort of deal with, it seems like.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly the pattern that we're seeing. I mean, the number that you're asking for, I'm sure it exists. I don't have it off the top of my head. What I can tell you is that writers are being asked to do more and more work in less and less of an amount of time. This will get a little technical, but here's the way that television writing has traditionally worked. We've been protected by norms that are not in our contract that resulted in longer terms of employment like you're talking about. So, for instance, the way a traditional television show works is you have writers hired in a writer's room. Then as the writer's room is finishing its work, the show starts shooting, right? And so some of those writers start going to set so that they can give notes. They can work with the actors. Oh, wait, that line didn't make sense when we actually heard it out loud. We need a quick change. We need some alts quickly, et cetera. That sort of thing is very important. Then some of those writers go to post and start editing the show and say, oh, this scene, we don't need this scene. You know what? We can remove this and write a little line of filler dialogue that someone will record in voiceover, right? To plug the gap. And so the result is that, writers, after writing the show for 3 months are then working on the show for another 3 to 4 months and receiving a producer's fee for that. And that, again, that's a pretty good chunk of change that will then tide them over for the maybe 12 or 18 months until their next job, as do residuals, which are very important, right? That is the structure of the business. What the companies have done specifically in television writing is they have destroyed those norms. A lot of what I just listed for you is not literally in our contract. It's just how TV has been made because that's the best way to make TV. What the companies realized is, oh, hold on a second. If we ask the writers to write the whole show before the show's been picked up, before there's even a green light, then there's no shoot for them to go to. So we can just wrap them all the day the writer's room closes, never pay them another cent, and starve them of their producer's fees, which are often like 2/3 of our income. And so we're being asked to do our most valuable work, write an entire season in a compressed amount of time, and then are denied the ability to go to set or to go to post. Instead, they just have one writer do that, the showrunner, and that showrunner is now becoming increasingly overworked because they no longer have all those other writers on set to help them out. Now, that's a little bit technical, but this is something that companies are trying to do to workers in every sphere, right? If you look at what the railroad workers' complaint was when, they were on strike and the Biden administration screwed them, what they were on strike for was precision scheduling, that they were being asked to do more work in less time, that they would only get like 2 or 3 hours off. They'd have to come right back to work, and that they were doing the same amount of work, but they weren't making as much money because the scheduling had been screwed with by the companies, right? If you look at like the retail employee who isn't able to, they have to go in whenever they're called, but their shifts are, the management dribbles out their shifts so they can't make a living. This sort of like creative scheduling, right, is what companies in every sphere are doing. And that's one of the things that we're fighting back against. So one of our very basic asks is that there has to be a writer's room. By the way, the companies are trying to eliminate the writer's room entirely. They're trying to shrink it and eventually kill it. We're saying there has to be a writer's room, and then writers have to be on set and they have to be in post because writing is done in all those steps. And we need to ensure that they're not kicked out of that part of the process and that money isn't taken away from them. But then the point of all this, as you say, is to make sure that writers are able to survive during those gaps between the jobs, because this is still a career where, it takes a long time to get your next job.
I mean, I can attest to, in my experience, having done sitcoms, the rewrites would happen in blocking, in rehearsal, in like on the night of the shoot, you'd do a couple of takes in front of a live audience and you'd switch it around a little bit. And, it's a 22-minute show. 2 or 3 jokes could make the entire episode. What's interesting about this though, is that like there is a layer of management that is there that it seems to me are not necessarily incentivized to sort of say to the CFOs or wherever this is, the people who are looking at the bottom line, they're not necessarily incentivized to say like, this is going to make the product shittier, because if everybody's under the same constraints, the level of competition will also drop, and they're still safe. Like, I mean, it's a weird dynamic as to how this could happen there, because the people who actually know how much this is going to be damaging still don't really have an incentive, as long as it applies to everybody. As long as everybody doesn't have their writers there, the quality of the product will drop, but we're still competing against, the other crappy product at that point, if it was to happen. But let me ask you about artificial intelligence.
Sure.
We just had Alex Pareene on. We didn't have time to get to it. He had written a piece basically saying the AI is not designed to be able to make a creative product. It can maybe do technical writing, but all it is basically just plagiarizing from other things. It can't surprise you in any way, in the way that writing is supposed to do. Now, maybe down the road, who knows, 100 years, 50 years, or something like this. But I'm not convinced that the executives aren't convinced about that. Like, I'm convinced that they think we can have somebody write up an AI template for a show, and then on Thursday we hire Adam to come in. He does a day of punch up. On Friday we hire, and we don't have to pay them benefits. We don't have to pay big contributions to their union, et cetera, et cetera. Give me, how sensitive is the Guild to that? Because my experience too with these strikes, the 08 strike and the, was it the 08, 09, and
07, 08.
And even like in the commercial SAG-AFTRA strikes, and the producers always seem to have a sense of where things are going, and we'll make a deal that's good for 2 years ago, but it's going to be a problem 2 years from now.
Well, look, we have an AI proposal that we are demanding that they address. They refuse to address it. And we're doing it for a simple reason. We are not going to let them use AI to undermine our wages and working conditions. Everything you said, by the way, is completely correct. Let's be really specific about what we're talking about, because AI is a marketing term that's designed to make you think that this software can do anything and everything, right? A year and a half ago, we just called it algorithms. We called it code, right? But now they've come up with a marketing term called AI, and there's a lot of hype and a lot of real technology all under that. So what are we talking about specifically? We're talking about large language model generative models, right? These do something very specific. You load a lot of text into them. They output text on the other side that looks like the input text, scrambles it up enough that it looks different, and it is very good at making coherent text that reads as grammatically sound and meaningful in the English language, right? But that's all it does, okay? That's literally all it does. Is it's a word blender, or as I think it's, I like folks who call it a word calculator. You can ask it to do interesting things with words. That is not what a writer does. A writer does not simply output text that resembles text that came before, right? A writer, first of all, we could wax on poetically about the creative spark and all that sort of thing, and coming up with new ideas and drawing from your own experience and putting it on the page. All that stuff is real, but it's a little woo-woo, right? So let's forget about that. It's also not literally what a writer does in film and television, which is the most intensely collaborative creative product on earth. A writer doesn't just output the text. The writer takes a call from the studio head and makes notes, or takes their notes. The writer goes and talks to the director and makes sure the script fits their vision. The writer talks to the actor and makes sure the actor likes the lines. The writer goes to set and observes what's going on and says, actually, if we do it like that, the joke's not going to land because the joke relies on XYZ, this happening on this other scene. We need to make sure, ABC, you've done this work, right? The writer works with the line producer who says, hold on a second, this script is a little bit too expensive. Can we economize on locations, right? It's all this really detailed human to human work and detailed subject-specific knowledge that if you were to try to put that into an algorithm, you'd literally have to invent data from Star Trek. And maybe it's going so fast and we're going to get there one day. I'll believe it when I fucking see it, Sam.
Right,
all right?
right.
Right now, they've invented an algorithm where you put text in one end, you get text out the other end, and it's extremely computationally expensive, and that's all it can do, right? So that's the reality of the situation. However, The CEOs are stupid enough to not understand how the software works, right? And they also don't understand what a writer does. I'm sure you've had plenty of bosses over your life. You know that your boss doesn't actually understand what you do. So I believe that Ted and David and all those guys, they believe that all writers do is output text. And they have been told by the hype maniacs who are telling them about generative AI that, oh, we can use this to reduce your labor costs because the technology is going so fast and it'll be AI media, blah, blah, blah. I know that they've drank the Kool-Aid. And so we know that they intend to use this very limited technology to try to undermine our working conditions. And so an example of what they might do is if we don't stop them, is they might say, hey, an AI wrote a great script. Oh, the script is so good. We love it. Now we just need you to go talk to the director, go talk to the actor, go to set, make sure it's all within budget, go to post, take all of our notes. I'm going to call you at 2 a.m. and yell at you because I don't like it and I want you to make changes. Oh, but you didn't write the script. The AI wrote it. You're just the freelancer we hired to punch it up.
Right.
Like that is what we are worried about. We're not going to be hired to babysit an algorithm, okay? And to do all of our work, all the same work we do today, but under, being paid less because they've decided a computer does it. That's, we're not going to allow that to happen. So our proposals are very simple. Sorry, if you had a question, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to say, and people should understand that within the context of this writer's world, there are very specific, and the WGA at various times will be asked to adjudicate who actually wrote this. Who gets the credit for the story, who gets the credit for the script, are they co-writers? And the scenario you just sort of came up with is exactly what I think they're contemplating. Yeah. And I think they're both wrong. But the problem is the price for their mistake will be paid by the writers, not by them at the end of the day. And if the contract is set up, writers get X, but assistant writers or AI babysitters, they're not writers, so they'll just get this. But in fact, they'll have to come in and do the actual writing. Where in a different world, the WGA would adjudicate like, no, they were the writer. That's what they were doing. But that's a plan. So what are you guys proposing?
So our proposal, it's a little bit technical because it refers to our contract, but we're proposing that AI cannot be used as source material or literary material. These are definitions in our contract. Source material is anything a writer might adapt, like a novel or another screenplay. Literary material is what a writer produces. That's our work output. That's like, the literal script pages. And so we're saying that we cannot be forced to adapt the work of an AI. And the work of an AI cannot be passed off as the work of a writer. Those are the two basic principles. It doesn't exclude any use of technology from the business entirely, but it does make sure that it cannot be used specifically to undermine our working conditions. And I really believe that in so doing, we're saving the industry from itself, because the fact is people do not want AI content. All right. We work at the highest level. The film and television industry, again, is the most valuable media property on earth, the American film and television industry. And it is the high end, right? People want that experience of paying $15 or $20 to go sit and watch a big budget movie that's a work of art and has the best acting and the best everything else, right? Maybe there's some world where people just want to guzzle down AI chum, right? Maybe there'll be a TikTok successor that's what you look at for 5 minutes before bed. People don't want to spend $15 to go watch that. There's different market segments for a reason. And, we feel that if they allow, AI chum content to overrun the media, the audience is going to rebel, and it's going to destroy what is, frankly, a really good industry, right? It's one of the few industries that actually produces art that people love. A lot of it's bad, a lot of it's very good, right? That makes people feel things. And that's a highly unionized industry where the workers up until now have actually gotten paid. And so we are trying to make sure that does not disappear because of the actions of a few short-sighted, tech-obsessed, idiot CEOs.
All right, let's talk a little bit about like the what's happening in terms of the labor action. I was part of the WGA back in the last strike, and the cohesiveness of that union at that time wasn't anywhere where it appears to be. I haven't written a script in over 10 years now, but the cohesiveness, but just even from the outside, the cohesiveness of that union today seems light years ahead of where it was then. And the solidarity across unions is also feels incredibly different. Like it felt like the writers were you couldn't even convince all the writers that they should be on strike. Some of the more prominent writers, to the extent you heard like writers talking about it publicly, I remember them, I don't want to name any names like Ridley and like there were others who and I know John from way back, but they were coming out and going, there was a little hemming and hawing about it, and we should just get this over with, and never mind like SAG-AFTRA or the Directors Guild seemed to come in and just completely sort of say like, this is not the same thing, and I think their union came up right after they sort of undercut the writers. It feels like 180 degrees difference now. Like you're hearing about production shooting down because SAG-AFTRA, I know if you're contracted for a gig, you've got to go work that gig, but there's definitely there's gum in the works these days.
Correct.
Will you walk us through that?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, the Writers Guild is united as we never have been before. And that's
98% with almost like 98% voting. I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah, 98% in favor of a strike in our strike authorization vote. The solidarity is immense on the picket lines. We have a few, look, I'll be honest, there's always a few, especially in a guild like ours, very well-off members who would prefer to not be in a union, right? And are not always on board. This year they're on board because they know that it's an existential moment for writers. And we are, I'll tell you, as I'm on the board and the negotiating committee, I can tell you from conversations I've had, we are incredibly united.
And we should say that it's doubly amazing because writers generally
don't
like other people. I mean, that's just the bottom line. It's like if your profession is to sit in a room, like the first part of your work product is right. It's because you don't want to be around other people for the most part. Correct. I mean, but
on the other hand, we also work together, right? In writers' rooms, we do work together and have that camaraderie, and that has spilled out onto the picket line. But the important thing that you say is that also we have the backing of every other union in town. And that is everyone from the Directors Guild to IATSE, which is the crew union, to Teamsters, which are the truck drivers, even unions like Unite Here, which is the hospitality union here in LA, that represents, really low wage hospitality workers. We are like in solidarity with them. They're in solidarity with us. They've been marching with us because they see that our fight matters to them, and that we're all part of the same broader industry. And a lot of that is because all these workers are feeling the same pressure. SAG-AFTRA actors are being ground down by being forced to do, these really laborious self-tapes for auditions. They're forced to buy their own cameras and hire people to read scenes with them. And then they send the tape in and nobody ever watches it. It's been this cost that has been pushed onto them by the studios. IATSE crew members are being scheduled within an inch of their lives, just like the railroad workers, where they only get 4 or 5 hours off a night, and then they, fall asleep behind the wheel and die. That's a real problem with IATSE members. It keeps going and keeps going. And so you're right. In 2007, I wasn't in the guild then, but I know from history that the guild was a little bit out there and alone, and didn't have that help. And in fact, some of those other unions came out against our strike and said in the press that they didn't support it. This year, they're not just with us, they are helping us. And so one example of that is that we have been shutting down productions all across Los Angeles and also other states. And the way that works is we establish a picket line in front of the entrance to the set. And the other workers in IATSE and the Teamsters, the crew members and the truck drivers, they honor our picket line. They say, I'm not going to cross a picket line. And they walk away, and therefore the show can't shoot. And that would never be possible if those workers didn't respect our picket line. If they didn't say, hold on, the leadership of my union told me we're all in the same boat here. I personally feel that we're all in the same boat because I've been screwed by the companies too. I'm honoring the picket line and walking away and taking that sacrifice on myself. And we're so grateful for them for doing so, because that means that the show's shut down. That means that the companies feel more and more pain because they rented this whole location, all this equipment, and they can't use it. And that means that the strike ends sooner. So yeah, it's a real new day in Hollywood labor. And I think it's part of the wave that's sweeping the entire labor movement, where, by the way, we also have unprecedented support from the public. More Perfect Union took a poll that said, the vast majority of people are on our side, including the majority of Trump voters agree with the Writers Guild strike. And that's because everybody has felt this, right? We're in a situation in this country where we've got practically 0% unemployment. Everybody is working, but nobody can afford rent, because this has happened to every worker in every industry. Everyone has been pushed down to zero. And when folks can't make a living anymore, they get pissed off. And I think that's what you're starting to see around the country. So when you look at Starbucks, Amazon workers unionizing, and the resurgence that we're seeing in Hollywood labor, I think it's all of a piece. It's all the same movement.
All right. Well, Adam, I know you got to get going. I imagine you got a lot of stuff to do. What can, and we should also say, the SAG-AFTRA strike authorization vote is due June 5th. So
yes. And I'm a SAG-AFTRA member as well, by the way. And SAG-AFTRA is also taking a strike authorization vote, which is huge and unprecedented. They haven't done that in 40 years for this contract. So that's a huge deal. And we're going to find out the results of that on June 5th. And if folks want to help out.
That's what I was going to ask you. How can people help?
If you live in Los Angeles or New York, you are welcome to come down to our picket line. You can go to WGA-strike2023.org, I think is the website, or Google it, and it shows you where our picket locations are. As long as you come check in, talk to our strike captains, make sure that you follow the rules and don't cause a ruckus, and just come and picket with us peacefully. If you live anywhere else, if you want to materially support the strike, you can do so by donating to the Entertainment Community Fund. This is a fund that's existed in Hollywood for 100 years to help folks in the industry who are down on their luck. But we have set up a fund specifically to help folks who are affected by the strike, who are not writers, actors, crew members, people like that can apply to this fund for direct financial aid. So if you want to support that fund, you can head to entertainmentcommunityfund.org, click donate, and there's a drop-down menu where you can choose where your donation goes. If you select film and TV, then it'll make sure it'll go to folks who are being affected by the strike. And we've raised in the Writers Guild over $1 million for that fund just from our own members. And I can't even estimate how much, supporters have raised for it, because, we've seen a lot of people do pop-up fundraisers and things like that. The support's been huge. So head to entertainmentcommunityfund.org if you want to support.
Yeah, we'll put links to that at majority.fm. And I know that has been a big reason why people have, to the extent that people have had, they worry about the strike. It is exactly for all the other people that they're working with. They're afraid of them suffering. Adam Conover, thanks so much for your time today. Really appreciate it. We'll put links to all that in the podcast and YouTube description today. Real pleasure, and way overdue. So thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you so much, Sam, and thank you for the solidarity.
All right, folks, we're going to take a quick break, and then we will head to the fun half. Just a reminder, it's your support that makes this show possible. Check out those links that we will put in for that strike solidarity fund. I can tell you that I've been involved in conversations. I mean, I'm not in that world really that much anymore, but I've been involved in conversations where people are just like, this is going to screw over a lot of people who, work on the set, or, because it's shutting down and this and that. So if you have the ability to contribute to that sort of strike fund, it's a fund that will fund the people who are not in the Writers Guild, but are impacted by this strike. But I think in a way that I have not seen, like in the last writer's strike, there is a real sense of solidarity and an understanding that, like, as this writer's strike goes, and so goes the stuff for the directors, but the actors and Yahtzee and the crew, et cetera, et cetera.
It feels like there's a message. Like, I mean, the 07-08 strike was, I'm from North Dakota. The only real union guy I knew growing up was a guy whose lawn I mowed who paid me well for mowing his lawn. Like the strike where like Conan, I think, like had to do stuff like that was like my first sort of real actual, is mediated through television, but like view of what strikes and labor action is. And so I think like this stuff is really, it is larger than just like the writers. It's the principle here, and I think like that's why, you know, anybody who thinks it's just narrowly about like entertainment, I think is missing the point.
This summer, man, we're going to see a lot of labor action on top of this. I mean, and this is the type of thing too that like the idea that this churn happens. You know, we're going to see that. I think that strike in the nurses' strike in Texas. We're going to see a UPS strike. I think there's going to be a lot of strikes this summer. Strike summer 2023.
Hope so.
Shut down this frickin' office.
Yeah, maybe Bradley. Let's talk after the show.
Water's off. We're out of here.
It's true.
Our plumbing is on strike.
The amount of times that we are in this office without any bathroom facilities is...
You know, David Cameron used to go into meetings with a full bladder because he says being under that sort of gun made him perform better.
Strange guy.
I wonder if people can notice our show being
a
little bit, you know. We're
moving a little quicker today. Folks, don't... people love Conover. Adam can't ruin the fun half. The GOP already did that. Got to add Conover best of. So how long do you think they can hold this strike? Just curious. I will say this. I think they can go a while. They went 3 months. If I'm not mistaken, it was in 2007, we did 3 months. I can't remember. I thought it was 2008.
Yeah, at least per Wikipedia here, it says it was from November 5th, 07 to February 12th, 08.
It was definitely my senior year of high school.
Jesus, November 5th. Okay. I had gone out. I had sold a show. This was like when I had gotten, I don't know if I had been fired by Air America at that point or what. I can't remember. It was right around that time. And I had sold the show on a Friday. The strike, November 5th was a Monday, right?
November 5th?
Yeah. Would the strike start November 5th?
Yes. Let me check.
It was either a Friday or a Monday because I had left CBS in LA on a Friday, sold a show that I was going to write and direct. And I think it might have been like they were going to do a pilot presentation, like a half.
Yeah, November 5th, 2007 was a Monday.
Yeah. And then, but on Monday, then the strike. So the paperwork never happened. And then I was like, oh God, I'm in trouble. I guess I gotta go back and kiss Mark Green's ass, get a job. That's basically what happened. Folks, fortunately, even Mark Green is still alive. He's probably alive. But no, Adam said, you've had a boss before. You know how much that sucks. Yeah, they have no clue as to what's going on, but I don't have a boss now. My boss is you. Or at least you can be my boss. I don't know that I would want anyone to have to deal with that. But nevertheless, you can become a member of the Majority Report by going to jointhemajorityreport.com. And when you do, you not only help the show survive and thrive, you not only get the free half free of commercials, you not only get the ability to I am the show via the free app, which is available to everybody, but you also get to say, you're my boss. It's about all that your boss authority has. But you can say it, and I will say, that's right, boss. So that says something. Don't forget justcoffee.coop. Fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Use the coupon code MAJORITY, get 10% off. That's a co-op, incidentally. All employee owned and run. Justcoffee.coop. Check it out. Matt, What's happening on Left Reckoning?
Yesterday we talked to Common Sense Skeptic, who has a YouTube page that goes deep into Elon Musk basically as a performative charlatan for the investor class instead of like an actual tech genius. For patrons, patreon.com/Left Reckoning, Jeremy Apple, who's the co-host of the podcast Big Shiny Takes and The Forgotten Corner, and also at the orchard.substack.com. We're talking about Alberta politics, the NDP, making a just transition plausible to voters and stuff like that. So patreon.com/Left Reckoning for folks who want a little bit of Canadian politics this weekend.
Bradley, ESVN.
Yeah, we were back on Wednesday because we were both out. Em and I were both out Tuesday. We had a long weekend. Did a little bit of an NBA and Stanley Cup final prediction. Did a little post-mortem on the Celtics, as well as discussed the Oakland A's potential move to Las Vegas, as well as the Arizona Cardinals cutting their only good player. So youtube.com/ESPN show for the full stream and clips if you'd like to catch up from there. And we will be back Monday.
A couple of words from the IM. Star Fox says, Sam, can we get the Discard Get a Shofar for our member Riv and his wife? They found each other a little later in life, just celebrated 8 years of marriage yesterday, and head over heels with each other. Riv is one of our premier wife guys in the server, an inspiration to all left is best. Rican Ray Formay, can we say we're your daddy? Yes. Become a member. You got wide latitude.
Might be the Sam OnlyFans. But.
Shart Looter. How much does your boss, me, have to pay to get my username read on air? Bingo. You got it. All right. We take a quick break. See you in the fun half. Left is best. Jamie and I may have a disagreement.
Yeah, you can't just say whatever you want about people just because you're rich.
I have an absolute right to mock them on YouTube.
He's up there buggy whipping like he's the boss.
I am not your employer.
You know, I'm tired of the negativity.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to upset you. You're nervous. You're a little bit upset. You're riled up.
Yeah, maybe you should rethink your defense of that, you fucking idiots.
We're just going to get rid of you.
All right.
But dude. You want to smoke this joint?
Yes.
Do you feel like you are a dinosaur?
That's some good shit.
Exactly. I'm happy now.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win-win.
Oh, hell yeah.
Now listen to me. 2, 3, 4, 5 times. 847-906-501-457. 2, 38, 56, 27. 1/2. 5 8s. 3.9 billion.
Wow.
He's the ultimate math nerd.
Don't you see?
Why don't you get a real job instead of spewing vitriol and hatred, you left-wing Limbaugh?
Everybody's taking their dumb juice today.
Come on, Sammy.
Dance, dance, dance.
Rand Paul.
I had my first post-coital scene with a woman. I'm hoping to add more moves to my repertoire. All I have is the dip and the swirl.
Fine, we can double dip.
Yes, this is a perfect moment.
No.
Wait, what?
You make under $1 million a year. You're scum. You're nothing.
Excuse me? Fuck you, you fucking liberal elite. I think you belong in jail.
Thank you for saying that, Sam. You're a horrible, despicable person.
All right, gonna take a quick break. I want to take a moment to talk to some of the libertarians out there. Take whatever vehicle you want to drive to the library. What you're talking about is jibber jabber.
Classic. I'm feeling more chill already.
Good. Donald Trump can kiss all of our asses.
Hey, Sam. Hey, Andy. You guys ready to do some evil?
Hitler was such an idiot.
That guy might be a Nazi.
Agree.
No.
Death to America.
You.
Yes.
Wow.
Wow, that's weird. No way! Unbelievable. This guy's got a really good hook.
Throw our hands up.
Ooh. Wow.
But Sam, I gotta get off.
No worries. Let's. I want to just flesh this out a little bit. I mean, look, it's a free speech issue. If you don't like me,
Hey, shut up.
Thank you for calling into the Majority Report. Sam will be with you shortly.
Number 5 has that? The one that's okay. Yeah. Hi, folks. It's the fun half on a Friday. I don't know if we're going to open up the phone lines. I know. We're running out of time. We had Conover for a while. I was excited to have him on. I like his work.
Yeah, he's got good energy too. Like Conover, I think I'm always impressed by folks who don't like I do say as a Marxist. I think this like the Nate Robinson current affairs sort of branding I think is really smart to like not sort of beat people over the head with you're getting a leftist perspective. And I think Conover like he's very like pro labor and I think people kind of get the point now. But what was so great about Adam Ruins Everything is it looks like a run of the mill like Discovery Channel show.
100%. 100%. It was presented as completely absent of ideology and was completely chock full of ideology. I think that's very helpful. Let's talk a little bit about Donald Trump.